had um, I had a few weird days where I was eating. I was a little concerned because I noticed that when I'm at work, I want to eat more from being stressed and from being lonely and from being just, I mean, it always leads to eating in shame, but it always leads to shame afterwards because, whatever. But I did notice that I did eat like when I wasn't hungry because I was stressed out because it made me feel better, like in that moment.
Yeah. Oh, I see. So, you're in the moment, you're dealing with an environmental, like, boredom, like you said, stress, being alone, and food is just something to do, something to distract you, something to make you feel better. We've talked, when we worked together before, remember we talked a lot about that victim position?
Yeah.
And really if we want to kind of say it differently, it's essentially like saying, I need help in this moment with what this is. So I can't do this on my own. So I need this to do it. Because without it on my own, I would have to face something I don't feel I can handle.
Right.
And that's what's underneath it. Without this fill in the blank aid, whatever it is, whether it's thinness, food, money, job, whatever the thing you've attached you need or fixated on that you think you need. Without it, the feeling is that I can't handle what's there. Right?
Yeah.
So it could be as simple as I can't handle boredom. Which is another word of saying I don't feel capable of entertaining myself. Creativity or, right? As an example, my son says he's bored all the time, and every single time, like, that means you are not entertaining yourself. It means you're sitting back and wanting something to entertain you, right?
Or figure out how to not be bored.
Yeah, be creative. Or another word is figure out how to not rely on something to entertain you. Right?
Yeah.
Entertain yourself. But in terms of like stress, so if you didn't have food, I want you to think of it this way. If food wasn't an option, what would you do? If nothing isn't an option. What you're experiencing is what you're experiencing, and you're not allowed to run away from it, hide from it, suppress it, repress it, deny it, avoid it. You know what I mean? You are in a space and you have to experience the emotion that's uncomfortable. What would happen?
I would probably have a temper off about it.
Okay, so the temper tantrum is a way to, it's like saying, I feel sorry for myself, and it's like having...
I would need to talk to somebody so I can deal with it.
Okay, you're breaking up. I couldn't hear what you just said.
I was being dramatic. I would need to talk about it to someone so that I could figure out what to do. Because if I was upset, it would be something that I couldn't handle without some guidance or feedback or because just something or even a sounding board, so I could just hear myself talk so that I could get it out and deal with it because I couldn't deal with it just sitting there in my head,
What was the stress?
Well, this business partner, I guess you would call her, she doesn't, apparently for quite some time, she does not like the way that I analyze the data for her, and I didn't know that, and she was voicing her concern. I don't think she even knew that I was doing it, but she was voicing her concerns to the guy that I work with, and so for months he's been data because it was cracked. And so he finally brought someone else into it to be the mediator. So when we got on the call, she just started spewing, and she was just really upset, and it just threw me off because I wasn't prepared to have to defend my reasons for, I wasn't expecting that reaction from her. I didn't know she was that upset. And then, so that was like the precursor. And then a couple days later, she sent me and Chris, the guy that I work with, an email and asked if she could take over what I do because she managed that segment. So that really, really kind of stressed me out because basically she is so unhappy with the way that I'm interpreting the data that she just wants to do my job for me. So first off, she should have sent that to me because I can't tell her that she can have it. That has to come from my manager and up to 3 other managers. So I told my manager, and she was pissed off because the girl didn't come to her first because they know each other. And so I just wrote her back, and I said, you just need to send this request to these 3 people. And I just left it at that.
Yeah.
But it really stresses me out because she's been feeling this way for months.
Well, if she feels that way, how does that impact you?
Because I immediately went to, because when we had the meeting, I could see her point, in her argument, but I could also see my point, and honestly, when you think about it, it's like, well, it could go either way, because there's not an option for me to score this. There are drop-down options, and I have to choose a certain selection for the root cause of the issue. Well, I can't choose more than one. And when you go and you read the documentation, well, you can interpret the documentation several different ways. And in my company, we pretty much, like in my department, and all groups, we get to go back and forth and argue. I mean, it's ridiculous. We argue about how things should be interpreted, how things should be scored, how things, we just go back and forth all the time. And we have several different groups that look at our data, and probably some groups that shouldn't look at the data. And so it's kind of like, it's like, I was actually thinking after the meeting that she should really be doing this because, I've been thinking this for several months that I should not be doing my job because I don't know enough about the way that it's set up. It's just wrong.
Yeah. So would you agree that this business partner is she right?
I think she's right in that she should be doing the work. I don't think she's right about how she's interpreting some of it. I don't know that she's completely right about how she's interpreting the data, but she's probably worth both. I mean, I get data.
It sounds like you're open-minded. It sounds like you're open-minded.
Well, I am, but it just makes me feel like, she's so upset over what I do. My work. I mean, she's so upset about it that she wants to do it herself.
So she's
and it just really upset me.
Yeah. Like, did you feel like you were being attacked? Or
yeah, and I didn't even know that I was doing it. In her mind, I didn't even know that there was a problem. I mean, she's been talking about it for months, but to somebody else, And
yeah.
it's like,
well, how do you not take on her energy if you can see she's got an emotional, personal issue? When you're talking to me, you clearly don't. So if you didn't have an emotional or personal issue, even with what she was suggesting. But it sounds like the way she's communicating is far more emotionally charged.
Yeah, it is. It's like she's personally. It's like it's so upsetting to her. It's affecting her. Her job. It's
Got
like,
it.
What I do, and it just makes me feel. It just makes me almost feel sick.
Okay, so what I'm trying to help you understand is where is the stress coming from? And the stress, from what I'm hearing, comes from the fact that you're taking responsibility for her emotional response. As if her, and what you've got to be able to see is first, are you doing less than what you're capable of right now?
Sometimes I feel like I am because of my emotional state.
Okay, well, that's, so hold on. Your emotional state is limited, and so therefore, relative to that emotional state, you are doing the best you can. It changes in relation to your emotional state. That's the way I am. That's the way you are. That's the way my children are. How we are emotional does change our ability. How emotional we are. Oh, I just totally jumbled all that up. And so I'm going to go back to the question. Are you doing the best you can with what you can handle in any given moment?
Yeah.
Okay. So what if you're inadequate?
That's a possibility.
So where this comes, so for this partner, she clearly has some emotional reaction to it. She's personalizing it, and it's inadequate for her. And at some point you have to accept that and say, I'm doing the best I can. And so if it's insufficient for her, she should do it or find someone else to do it. You're doing the best job you can with what you're aware of and what you're doing. Sounds like she's the only one that has a problem with it.
Yeah.
Is she a boss?
I know when we got off the call, my manager said that, who's a new manager, she said that in her world, people just argue about that stuff all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Constantly about how things should be interpreted.
Well, and there's probably so many different ways to interpret it that are good, right? So in that case, how do you resolve that stress that built from being attacked?
Well, in the past, I've always eaten,
so hold on a second. Hold on. So in the past, you've eaten. Did that actually do anything?
Well, it made me not feel in that moment.
No, it doesn't do anything. It's like pushing pause. It didn't do anything in terms of the stress. So go into what does me eating food actually do to what this person felt and how they talked to me and how it felt when I experienced it. Did food consumption actually change that? No, it did nothing. Does nothing. What it serves, though, is the moment you feel like I can't handle this, I need help, it basically says we're going to push pause so that I can eat this food and forget about it. Just deny it. You go into denial, basically, in a way.
Yeah. I hide.
Yeah. Yeah. That's like that fight or flight response to you're fleeing, you're shrinking, you're hiding, that lower level of survival mode, that's the low, when we look at consciousness and human consciousness in survival goes two ways, okay, or under threat, if you want to call it. Goes in two directions. You either fight, that would be throwing a fit. Boo-hoo, that's like fighting. Yeah. Shrinking is hiding, going into denial, distraction, avoidance. You're not addressing anything, right? Whereas on the fighting side of survival, you're addressing it, but you're addressing it with anger, rage. You're addressing it with a weapon, which is an attachment, right? Like, I'm gonna do something about this. I'm gonna prove myself by becoming really skinny, or like buying this car, and I'm gonna show everybody that I can handle this. Or, all of those responses, whether you're fighting or fleeing, are survival levels of consciousness, which is kind of like our primitive ways of being, right? So the hiding aspect is common for people who do not feel they can handle it. Do you understand that? Can you see why, if you don't have any sense of capacity or handling, if I didn't, I'd hide too. Avoid, deny.
I don't have emotional maturity, I guess, when it comes. I don't know how to handle it if people are yelling at me or attacking me.
Well, you don't necessarily feel competent in yourself.
Yeah.
Right? And so as you mature, right, the next step would be competence. Competence in yourself. So when someone is coming at you, the response in the example that you gave around this woman who's really kind of like lost her shit and is upset about it and complaining about it and he's highly emotional about it. If you had competence in yourself, how would you respond?
I would just explain to her why I scored the data the way that I did, and which I did do that. I just probably, if I had known how upset she was going to be, I would have prepared a little bit more. And I still, when I went back after the call and I looked at the work and everything, I really feel like I scored it correctly based on the way that the documentation is telling me to score it.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I can see her point because she's trying to explain. There's almost like a gap.
Okay.
We don't know.
So if you were, the way you would respond with emotional competence would be to be able to recognize, well, first of all, someone in fight mode would go into, I'm going to find something wrong with her. Oh yeah, I'm going to basically become a mirror image of you to me. You would inflate yourself, speak louder, that aggressive emotion that came out of her, you would do that in reverse. So that would be someone that got competence to fight. Now, if we get a little bit more mature and not in like, I have to fight to defend myself mode, but, so your reaction to me is actually very mature. I could see her point. I think that based on what she's saying, she's right. But I'm doing it from this point of view, and this is just the way that I felt. This was my first route to go, whether it's how you were taught to do the job. So there's two ways to do it. Change to meet her needs, or you just say, here's how I'm doing it. I'm sorry. If this isn't good enough for you, well, then maybe she should do it for herself. And to go into it.
I think I didn't communicate that what I was telling you. I didn't really communicate that yet because I was sitting there like, oh my God, she's yelling at me. And I kept saying,
so as she was yelling at you, were you in your mind formulating what you were going to eat? Oh, I'm going to go get some.
No, I wasn't thinking about food at all. I was thinking
that's
about
awesome.
I was trying to figure out, oh my God, first of all, I was thinking, have I screwed up? And then I was thinking, I was trying to, I just said to her, I said, I understand where you're coming from, and this is why I scored it the way that I scored it and why I did. It's just that I didn't communicate that well because I was put on the spot, and so I don't feel like at the end of the call that she even heard what I was saying. And the mediator actually agreed with both of us, and like some of the examples, she agreed with her, and some of them she agreed with me, and her viewpoint was a little bit different than how I had the feedback that I had been given a year ago when this came up, and the way that I had been, interpreting everything. So I'm still a little confused about how this really should be done now, because I see her way, and I see mine too, and I feel like
maybe
all we're going to do is just argue.
Yeah, maybe.
And the mediator person, she felt like she was just stuck in the middle. I could tell she didn't want to get involved. She didn't want to upset anybody. And
well,
so it's kind of like.
So you're doing the best you can. Maybe you need to go back to the drawing board, learn a new way to do it. Either that or continue to do it the way you're doing. And that woman, business partner you're working with is going to end up having these issues that are really kind of brought upon herself. You know, so back to the food consumption part of this, though, I'm also in my mind observing, are you okay being judged or seen as less than? If you're shrinking and hiding, what does that response, what would make sense for that response? Are you okay with someone thinking that you're inferior or you're not good enough or that you're not doing a good job? If someone shrinks and hides, what does that say?
They don't want to deal with it.
Yeah, can't handle it. They feel they cannot handle it. So again, remember when I said when you're shrinking and hiding, it's a sign you do not feel competent in yourself to handle what that is, right? And so that's, so if someone judged you, and I remember you and I talking about this before, if someone doesn't like you, you feel that means that there's something wrong with you. You're not necessarily recognizing that's their opinion, right? There's so many different ways to see something to create 50 different opinions, right? Look at your work, for example. You just came up with so much data. There's many ways to do it, right? You can go back and forth all day long.
Yeah, and I don't even, and part of it is I don't feel like I know what I'm doing 100%. I feel like a lot of things get thrown at me that I've never handled before. Yeah. And I don't really have the information and the resources or skill to be able to.
So in that case, you have to be okay with that. If someone's like recognizing, it's okay to see that it's not you that sucks. It's the limitation in your education in this area and training that sucks.
Yeah. And then I do start to feel sorry for myself because I'm like, how can I be this old and not know how to do all this? Like, I should be able to know how to do all this at my age. I mean, a 30-year-old should be able to know. And then I start beating myself up. And then
well, that belief right there is like, age has nothing to do with intelligence. There's plenty of people who are older and not very intelligent. And keep in mind, if someone is so I think you need to question some of those beliefs that you have around age. Because you're okay, let's just say you aren't very smart. Okay, let's just go with that. Could you do better than what you're doing? Not right now.
I think if I had better training, I probably could.
Okay, so there's context with that. Well, I don't have the training. So if you don't have the training, how are you supposed to do what you're supposed to do? That's not an age problem. It's like my mother-in-law never went to college. Ever. At all. There's a level of awareness she does not have because of it. I have friends that didn't go to college, and you can tell them that they didn't either. And you know what? They're still really intelligent people. You know what I'm saying? That intelligence has nothing to do with age. You can have a 5-year-old who has high intelligence relative to a 5-year-old. Relative to what they're exposed to. It's all relative. You're highly intelligent. It's just relative to what you're exposed to and what you've done. So the language, so I think what you need to look at is why would you position yourself to feel dumb when you haven't had the training? I'm assuming this talk, that when you talk about yourself this way, is it usually because you're wanting to go eat?
No, I mean, I always want to eat, so that's just kind of a given.
Well, and that's not true either. You don't always want to eat. It's relative to specific things that you want it, so you don't necessarily want it to the same degree all the time.
Well, I pretty much get up every morning and just wait to see how long I can go without eating. So,
well, do you wait until you're hungry, or you go past hunger and you try to skip all this food? What do you? We're skipping around right now.
Stress, or I try to drink it. Like I try to hold it off with coffee.
So, are you hungry, or are you? What are you waiting for?
I'm waiting until I feel like it's okay to eat. For whatever reason, like if I'm not a normal eater, so like if I've eaten a lot the night before, then I wake up and I'll probably feel kind of groggy, and I'll drink coffee to get going, and then if I'm at work, if I'm starting to do my work and I can't focus because I can't think, then I'll eat something.
Does that usually help?
Because I believe that it'll make me think better.
And does it? If you start feeling
sometimes it makes it worse.
Okay.
If I'm shaking or like my hands are shaking,
okay,
and I eat some like a hamburger or something like protein, then it'll help. And coffee, and then if I can stop. But if I eat like a bagel, then 2 hours later I want to eat more, and then I start thinking about food and I can't even focus on what I'm doing.
Yeah, usually the bagel, it's not because of the bagel so much as you just feeling bad that you ate it that does that. Oh.
So when people do attack me, part of my initial reaction is, oh my God, did I screw up because I was in a food coma, and I didn't know what I was doing, and then when I go back and I look at it, because that's the first thing I think of, it must be right, I must have screwed it up because I wasn't thinking clearly that day. And then when I go back and I check my work and I see that a lot of times it's right, I'm kind of surprised because it's like, oh, I did, pull this correctly. I think most of it goes back to this. All of it really kind of goes back to. I feel like this food thing that I have that I can't I need to get out from under, because that's what really when I'm not, it's not so much the eating as it is fighting the urge to eat. It takes a lot of my energy.
So where does the urge come from?
I don't know. I mean, I know, we talked about the root cause of it being, the shame. But it's been like this for my whole life, so. And I know that's part of it.
Well, the shame and how it promotes the idea that you shouldn't eat, which then triggers a primal need to feed yourself. But if you had to describe it.
Well, it's like I'm always in that fight or flight response, a fight or flight mode where I'm not really thinking logically. And I feel like that transfers into my work.
For sure.
Because I'm trying to do my work while I'm in the fight or flight.
And that's got to be really, really hard. And so for you, the idea that if you can eat, that probably feels that you're safe. It gives you a sense of calm.
I get relief.
Yeah. So what that...
I'm not eating, I'm looking for the relief.
Yeah.
And everything around me.
Got it. Yeah. Well, that would make sense, especially if, our wiring is to prioritize food. If we had to prioritize survival needs, which one do you think is going to be the number one priority?
Food, air, and water.
You got it. You got it. So can you see why then your brain would go, well, let's get some food first. Let's get some food first.
It's kind of like I'm trying to do my job while I'm being chased by a lion.
Yes. Oh my God.
I'm never confident that what I'm doing is correct.
Yeah.
Because of my emotional state when I'm doing my automatically think,
I should maybe get some food.
And when I go over it and I realize that I've done part of it, or at least part of it right, I'm surprised because I never feel like I'm in a zone where I can really do good, effective work.
Yeah.
Because I'm always fighting this food thing.
Well,
that's where it comes from.
Okay, when you say I'm always fighting this food thing, what are you saying?
I'm always feeling like I'm being chased by the lion. I'm always in that fight or flight.
Yeah, but the food thing, where's the food come into that?
Because I'm trying to fight off a desire to binge.
Okay, so let's open that up. Because the actual food consumption would get rid of that feeling.
Yeah.
Okay, so you fighting it off, right, is making it bigger. Am I right or wrong?
Well, I get temporary relief and then it starts over again.
Well, yeah, I understand that too, because you get temporary relief and then you feel bad about it.
Yeah.
And then it comes back. Right? I shouldn't have done that. I ruined it. I might as well. There's no hope for today. Do you ever think that there's no hope for today?
Yeah.
How often do you feel that way? There's no hope for today.
Anytime, all the time. Like anytime I don't stay on what I think in my head I should be eating.
Yep. Okay. So this to me sounds like anorexia. I know that sounds shocking, but that's how an anorexic thinks, right?
Except they don't eat the amount of food that I do.
No, they would if they didn't isolate themselves. Okay? If they come out of isolation, they do. And they usually puke it up afterwards because of the shame they have afterwards. But what you're describing is identical to what I experienced, right? So what you're not maybe seeing is that your desire for food is actually coming from this belief and idea that you're not allowed to eat. You cannot eat. You have to be perfect. Would you agree that feeling is, when you start the day, is perfectionistic? You start the day, I'm going to see how long I can go before I eat. And so can you see where your whole day is starting with the idea of food? How long can I go before I eat? So the whole thought of the day is beginning with deprivation all day long until you eat, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So when you said, I feel like I have fight or flight all day long, do you think that is to do with you wake up and you tell yourself, I'm going to be perfect today in my deprivation? And you kind of like...
Well, I don't think of it like that. I mean, I do have some good days. Like if I have 3 or 4 good days of normal eating or not eating, not overeating, and I wake up in my bones and I feel better because, physically, because I'm not binging, I'll have some time in there where I'm okay. And then if something happens and I eat something that I feel like in my head I shouldn't eat, it just starts all over again. Yeah,
well, and then you feel like, well, there's no hope for today. And don't you agree? Then you commit to eating all day. And it's kind of exciting, right? Because you can eat whatever you want that day, and you don't have to feel bad about it because the day's already ruined.
Right.
Yeah. But then the next day, would you agree? Then you have to restrict a little bit more. Those are the days after you have a binge day that you have to be perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like a pendulum swing, right? It gets really, really high on one side, and then you got to go equally and oppositely the other direction. And then the stricter you are with your I'm not going to eat until dinner. Can you see why then your focus would be on food all day? Especially if you be really strict. Like, you're not normal. You know, like you said, I have normal days where I eat like a normal person and I feel physically great after a few days. But then something happens. I like say, fuck it. You give yourself the whole day an extravaganza without shame and guilt with food, knowing that you're gonna follow up to that day with a day of more intense restriction, right? Because if you have a big day, you need to have an extra small day.
Right.
Yeah.
I know. I see all that.
Yeah. Well, the small day, don't you agree? I need you to see something. That day where you're not allowed to eat much and you got to keep it strict. What is the likelihood you're going to binge that day?
Well, I mean, the likelihood is very high every day. It's like 80% every day.
It's 100% on days you're strict. It's 100%. It's not 80%.
Well, I'm always strict. I'm never not strict unless I'm binging.
That's not true. You just told me there will be a string of days where I'm normal.
Well, normal to me means that I stay on the diet without binging.
Do you feed yourself like a normal human being? Or are you feeding yourself like a hostage?
Oh, I have like a protein shake or oatmeal and yogurt and a salad and fruit, you know, protein and.
So how long can you live that way?
I could do that about 3 days.
Okay. So you can. It sounds silly, doesn't it?
It's insane.
I know. I know. I've been there. There was one day I binged over 12 times.
Did you throw up?
Every time.
No, I could never figure out how to do that.
You don't want to. You don't want to do that.
Yeah, I probably did.
Your teeth would be falling out. You'd already had a heart attack. I mean, it's so dangerous. But the binges become really big when you're going to puke. You think yours are big? They get bigger. Anyways. So the problem I know for me when I was in it was getting enough separation from it to see how it works and where it begins, right? Because it's like, where does it start? Like, what's propelling this forward? Because it's like a circle, right? It goes in circles. You go into the restriction. You can be perfectionistic. As soon as you make a flaw, the day's ruined. Then you're actually overcompensating, trying to get as much food as you can in, which is promoting the same exact restrictiveness that then promotes perfectionism with any little flaw that creates this idea you ruin the day. Then you go through that day feeling relieved because you can actually eat like a normal person, but you're going to eat 10 times the amount because you're going to go into 10 times the restriction. So do you see it goes in circles, right?
Yeah.
Some days you can starve yourself, but then eventually you become high. And you know what? That feeling that you said, that constant need to eat, have you ever thought that might be because you're super restrictive? Right? And we talked about this too, that intense drive to restrict food comes from how intense your shame is about your weight. The more intense, if you want to think of it like volume, the higher the volume is on the shame about your weight, the more strict you're going to be with food.
Yeah. Yeah, I did get that. I had a day, I have moments of clarity and, and I get better. I just can't consistently keep that clarity in my head so that
I love
like when we talk about.
I love that when you texted me, you're opening yourself up, and my response was to help you. Your goal is to think about it in those moments, to question, why you would think this way. You had said, waiting until I'm hungry feels like I'm dieting. Eating without restrictions feels like I'm emotional eating.
Yeah, because I had decided that the only way that I was going to, because if I don't restrict myself, that means I can't restrict myself when I'm not hungry. But that just kind of leads me back to, then when I don't put any kind of restriction on it, then I eat like with this lady. I said, fuck it, I'm just kidding. And I didn't even intentionally realize at the time that I was upset. I just had a bite of rice, and it was just so good. And I immediately felt relief, and I felt better. And I ate the whole thing, and I wasn't hungry. Because the only reason I ate it was because I wanted it, and I was like, well, Heather, if you're not going to eat without, you're not going to put any restrictions on it, then you should eat it because you want to eat it. But then that doesn't take into account that I don't feel.
Well, you're not actually taking the time to look at it. You're not looking underneath it. Well, it tasted good. Well, if you pause for a second, you'll realize it's not about the taste. You're actually just seeking compensation for feeling attacked. You'd have to look at the big picture and pause. And and how does eating to hunger feel restrictive, but starving myself doesn't?
Now that feels restrictive too, but we had talked, and then I had decided from our discussion that I couldn't, because when I was doing this with you before, I had decided the only time I was going to eat when I was physically hungry. Mm-hmm. And that worked. And then. Mm-hmm.
And then you started to lose weight, and shit went to hell.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So you have to look at why you're eating if you're not hungry. So the concept of eating to hunger is just a way for you to gauge the emotional reasoning you're using. There's a difference between actual physical need and that emotional need. So it's a way for you to witness an emotional need and actually recognize that it's emotional, right? That this isn't actually physical. It's not the rice. It's the need to feel compensated. I'm pissed off. And it feels good to feel like I'm caring for myself, And maybe it is good rice, but if you're not hungry, what is it serving?
It's not serving anything, so I can't really do that. I really have to only eat when I'm hungry so that I can.
Well, you can figure it out. Yeah. Yes, exactly. That's the ultimate goal right now. But can you see how hard this is if you? Yes. If you are, get rid of the concept of losing weight, okay? Black that out right now. Imagine that you'll never lose weight eating to hunger. You just never will. Just go there with your thoughts, okay? What would be the benefit then of eating to hunger? And, really what it is, it's relying on your hunger to tell you when and how much to eat. Yeah. What's the benefit of relying on hunger to tell you when and how much to eat?
Well, then the body is taking over that.
And what's the benefit?
The benefit is that I don't have to worry about it anymore.
Right! Just keep it as simple as that.
I do have to worry about my emotions. I do have to take care of that.
Yes, so that's where if you refuse, okay, so you can look at, okay, well, I want to eat right now for something, okay, and I'm not hungry. If that feels like a diet to you, that means you're feeling sorry for yourself.
Yeah.
So okay. What's the solution? What should we do? The moment you want to eat, but because you're not hungry, you feel sorry for yourself. What is feeling sorry for yourself? How are you going to do this if you can't resolve the thing you're feeling sorry for yourself? If you feel sorry for yourself because you can't eat, what are you going to do?
Eat.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. I'm like, who are we kidding here? You're going to get your goddamn food. I think what this comes down too for you, Heather, is having a personal will to do this. That has nothing to do with me. You're not doing it for me. It has to do with your will to figure this out. And not because you want to lose weight. You have to keep that out of this because the weight loss aspect of it pressurizes everything and makes it impossible. Right? The reason why you did experience the success you did when we first started is because we eliminated your weight from the equation until you brought it back in, and then it was hard to come back out. Right? I think there was something I said to you last time that really connected for you too, is if we were to put you into a coma, so you are not involved anymore, what would your body do?
Well, it would rely on whoever was feeding it.
Well, it would, if you disengaged, like if we could take you out, would your body, it would naturally go, it doesn't need your help, does it? Does it really need you to starve it?
No.
Right, but that's what you're doing to it, not realizing that that's what's promoting this, primitive, it's real primitive what you're activating. That incessant need and thinking about food, that's super primitive, isn't it?
Yeah, I never really thought about food intake as being a primitive thing.
Oh, yeah.
I guess because it's so,
it's ancient.
It's so abundant.
Yeah, but that's current. That's currently abundant. How many years and years and years and years and years of living in starvation had to be there for us to have this primitive urge to make sure we have food?
Right, but I did not grow up in poverty, so it didn't occur to me that would even.
It exists. In every one of us. And it doesn't matter if there's food around you. If you feel deprived, you're triggering it. That's how sensitive this is too.
Yeah.
If your psychological need for food, that psychological awareness that I have enough food, I have enough in storage, I can always get more. If none of that is secure, you are wired to eliminate everything else and prioritize food. Remember when I said, if we were to prioritize your threats in life, the brain is wired to prioritize food above the rest.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Unless there's a tornado coming at you, you're going to leave the food. But then eventually, in the case of, but so clearly your number one psychological need is threatened because you're acting like a primitive, primitive person, right? I need to get my food. I need to get the food. I need to get the food. You're acting like you're in a third world environment, right?
Yeah.
But you're not. You're in a first world environment. So where is the third world response coming from? Could it be your diet?
Well, yeah, of course.
I know. And so what's amazing to me, and this to me is so amazing. People assume that if you have more body fat, that primitive need for food just should go away. It doesn't. Just because you have extra energy storage and extra body fat does not mean that your brain and that psychological wiring goes away.
Yeah.
Right? And so that's I think so amazing when you witness someone who has like a binge eating disorder, is it's clear this person is in a third world mentality with food.
Well, not everybody has a degree in biology either.
No, of course not. No. Physiology. No, they just think you're lazy, and it's like, no, clearly this person is in a third world environment as in terms of how they relate to food. It's to me, it's like so understandable because of how much shame you carry about your weight. Again, you have that much shame about your weight that you are holding yourself to a third world type of food consumption. Do you know how much easier this would be if you just moved to a third world environment?
I know. I thought about that. I didn't think about that.
Then you wouldn't feel so deprived. You'd feel pretty intact with your community. And it would make you probably realize how fucked up this idea is. And you'd be like, I should be so grateful. What the hell am I doing here? Right? Your whole perception of what lacking is would totally change. You'd probably have, you'd have an awakening, to be honest with you, because your actual.
I wouldn't be able to eat either. I'd be eating like they would.
Well, nothing would really change for you. It wouldn't change anything, to be honest with you. And then what would happen the moment you come back to a first world environment?
I would start eating again.
Yeah, because you're still in that third world brain. You know, you'd have to come out of that. But how do you do that? How do you do that when you are being held to a body that requires a third world environment? How are you going to change this in the body you have? So that's the goal, right? Don't you agree?
I have to stop listening to everybody else.
You do. You really need to honor your own experience here, because you're not ignorant. You're not. You have firsthand experience in this state of mind, right? And your response to deprivation, don't you agree, is kind of radical? Meaning
I think it's pretty appropriate considering the way that I was brought up.
I would agree, but don't you agree it's kind of radical? Like, it's extreme.
It doesn't feel that way because everybody around me is doing it. Maybe not.
No, I was going to say, no, honey, no, this is not normal dieting, what you're doing to yourself. It's not. But it makes sense for how much shame you have about your weight. That's the difference, right? If you saw someone who is 200 pounds, you would think it was crazy if they starved themselves. You'd be like, why would you starve yourself? That's ridiculous. But if you saw someone else who was 400 pounds, you'd say they should starve themselves.
I don't really do much of that anymore. I used to be like that, but
well, that's good. But but you are to yourself still. You are in your own. Okay, so you do. You're still doing it to yourself, right? So you have to really look at anybody. It doesn't matter if you're thin, medium, morbidly obese. Anybody who is told they have to wait as long as possible to eat, and then they can hardly eat when they do get to eat, is going to be sensitive to binging. Especially when they are surrounded by the abundance of food we're surrounded by.
Yeah, I can see how I've done that to other people.
Mm-hmm.
I'm so glad I never had children because that's one of the reasons why I never wanted to have children, because I was afraid that, I knew even though I'm not totally, understand, what I'm doing, I knew that it was wrong and that I would probably do this to my children, because I would look at other people's children and I would be like, how come they're not overweight? Like, how come they don't care about food? And I knew that I would probably do that to them if I had. I didn't know what I was doing to myself.
Yeah, and you didn't know any alternative, but you do know that it's not okay.
Yeah, but I was in, I used to feed my cat organic food. I just feed and I would buy him the best
mm-hmm.
food at the pet store that was organic and cage-free and all that other stuff,
mm-hmm.
because I wanted him to live a long time.
Yeah, well, there's no guarantee.
I didn't buy him with all those fillers and stuff in it. I would have done that to my children if I had children. So, thank God I didn't have children. So,
well, they would have ended up having a binge eating disorder.
I would now, but, had I had them
Yeah,
But
you know,
I have what you do, so.
I have a really good friend who is bona fide, certifiable orthorexic. Okay? Well, she's an acquaintance. She has been living, like, totally based on the fear-mongering of the internet fear-mongers. You know, all organic, sustainable, planted, growing in our own environment, making sure it's getting our sun and our moon and our, you know, everything. Okay, and her mom had breast cancer, and she was so narcissistically critical of her mother because she thought her mom was so unhealthy and she doesn't care about her health, and that's why she has cancer and she's killing herself because she won't think about her food and her food is everything. Well, guess who ended up with breast cancer?
Your friend.
Yeah, in a bad case of it. Rapid growing. I mean, I can't be around EMFs and the radiation, and she wasn't getting mammograms. She was getting the cold mammogram thingy, right? And she had a horrible, okay? Never considering that her fear and her shaming and her continuous obsessive compulsiveness around health might be an actual source of the issue that caused this. Plus her freaking genetics, right? So I feed my dog raw. Potato eats raw chicken that I cut up for him. He's gonna die when he's gonna die. And every so often I give him my table scraps. I guess where we need you to be is in a space of abundance. So I want you to think, if you were to stop trying to be thinner, just go here with me. I know this is so counterintuitive, right? I understand that. If you were to quit trying to be thinner and to lose weight, you just quit, what is going to happen?
I have no idea.
Well, what does your fear tell you? Because there is something that comes up. If you...
Well, you know, I thought last week that if I just didn't care and just ate without restriction, that I would get better. But all I did was just eat more because
because you care. Because you actually care. You can't just say I don't care when you actually care. So just trust me. If you quit trying to be thinner forever, I mean legitimately, not just fakey. Okay.
I don't know how to do that. I don't know how. I hate being fat. I've just been honest.
No, I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that. I'm not. It's not like I'm sitting there going, "What? Oh my God! I can't believe it."
I don't.
Okay.
Don't.
So I need you to answer my question.
Yeah.
What's going to happen?
I would not care as much about. I wouldn't notice what I was eating.
Okay, so pause it.
I wouldn't eat.
Okay, hold on. So tell me what truthfully comes up emotionally. Your emotional response if you were to quit trying to be thinner, what are you afraid of?
That I will stay the same or get...
And
that I'll get bigger.
And what will happen?
I'll die.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. That's what is backing this. If I quit trying to be thinner, I will die.
Yeah.
Can I get an amen?
Amen.
That's what's backing this. If I quit dieting, if I quit starving myself, I will die. I will get fatter and die.
Yes.
Okay? But what you're doing to be thinner is killing you. It's destroying your life. It's overtaken everything. You're lifeless, basically. So I want to pose something. If you found out you're going to die in like 4 months from now, would you spend the next 4 months continuing to do what you're doing if you knew you were going to die?
You mean everything or just with food?
Everything.
Oh, no. I would quit my job.
You
I
would
would go to every day.
Okay, so you would enjoy your life. You'd go to the pool.
Yes.
Okay. So you'd actually engage with a real life.
Yes.
Let that sink in for a second. Would you binge every day, all day? Would you do that if you knew you were going to die? Would you make that what you experience in your...
I might have really good meals, so I don't know that I would binge because that would interfere with me going to the pool.
Now I like what you're saying, dearie. Now we're making some progress. You would enjoy... I would too. If I were... Food is so awesome. I mean, it's such a primitive aspect of... it's like when I had to put my Jana down, I went and got her an ice cream cone. We got her a cheeseburger. It's like, enjoy your food. Enjoy it. But the binging, you could see right away that would be a waste. Why would you do that? First of all, why would you have any shame about eating? You're not restricting anymore. The whole binge cycle would be just completely go poof, be gone, right? Poof.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to ruin my day with eating too much.
It doesn't have any relevance all of a sudden. You're like, well, that's dumb. Why would you waste your time with that shit? It was only relevant when I was trying to save my life, right?
And I wouldn't go to work because I was going to die in 4 months, so I wouldn't have to worry about money, and I wouldn't have to worry about the stupid shit that I do all day long, which doesn't really...
Yeah, but you let's just say you can't do that. Let's just say you're going to die, okay? You have to be a real human. You need to pay for the food that you're going to feed your animals with. You need to pay your rent. You can't just do that. But you do need to enjoy your life. You do, right? So notice the shift that would occur. Right? And so what do you think would happen over the course of 4 months before the day you die to your body as you eat what you want to enjoy and you go to the pool and you're not binging anymore because you don't give a shit? How much weight do you think you'll lose by the time you die? 30, 30 pounds? You'd laugh. You'd be like, wow. All I got to do is accept I'm going to die, and all of a sudden, everything gets better.
Yeah.
I had a moment where this came to me. Everything I'm doing is because I'm super afraid to gain weight, right? But yet I'm willing to commit suicide because I can't do this anymore, right? So for me, the recognition that if I were to quit what I was doing, it's the same as committing suicide. So essentially, there is an aspect of death here that has to be vocalized for you. It has to be vocalized for everybody that I work with, right? Underneath all of this is a fear that you're going to die. Not realizing that everything you're doing to protect yourself and to try to hide from that fear is actually killing you. So if you could just accept you are going to die, what happens to this behavior that is so intense and abusive? There's no point to it.
It seems kind of silly.
Well, it is silly. I hate to break it to you. It is. You could look at your weight right now and say, my weight is as big as it is because of that fear of dying and how intense I've been trying to stop myself from eating and what that's done to magnify my need for food. And if I just accept that I'm going to die, all of a sudden, I wouldn't give a shit anymore. I wouldn't diet the way I'm dieting. That's ridiculous. And I would fully enjoy food the way I enjoy food. And it would end at that point because I want to go outside. I want to be in nature. I want to be in the sun. I want to breathe the air. I want to actually connect with this life that I'm living. Why can't you do that while you're alive? Why do you have to be in, like, I'm going to die mode while you're alive?
Yeah, I see your point.
Can you get a sense of how different this perception would be?
Well, it's more like about living in the moment. And when I'm doing all this thinking, it's like I'm thinking about my future, and I'm thinking about next year, and I'm thinking about, how long I have before I'm too old to do this or too old to do that. And
yeah, you're not.
Think about, okay, I may not be alive next week. It kind of changes things.
Yeah, and then you become fight or flight mode, right? That perpetual fight or flight mode is like, do it, gotta do something, you're gonna die.
Yeah.
And then it projects into you cannot eat, and all of a sudden, what are you doing? You're eating and eating and eating and eating and eating and eating, and then all the while you feel like I'm gonna die. So the next day, oh, it's intense. Would you agree your fear of dying is directly promoting this restrictive eating?
Yeah. I mean, but before I had all these health problems, I had to do it before I was too old to get married.
Yeah, so it's just changed. It's the same thing. It's just changed and evolved to be the same thing in a different way.
What was that again?
I said as you've gotten older, it's just changed. It's the same thing in a different mask, with a different mask. It's the same pressure. You gotta fix.
Yeah, I guess that's what that's what's different about it. If there's no pressure, there's no I have to do this before some time. If there's no pressure, then it doesn't matter.
So I want you to remove that pressure and tell me how you would exist with food. So go into what it would feel like to completely remove that pressure. How would you want to exist with food? Would you be constantly needing it all the time, 24/7?
No, I'd be more relaxed overall.
Right, you would, because you can have it later. You can have, it doesn't have to happen in the now, right? Now. That's very, very much a part of that fight or flight response. When you're in that space of do something, fear, your hair's standing up, your mouth is dry, your stomach stops digesting, your blood sugar skyrockets, and this is even before you get your food. Right? That's what happens when someone's in fight or flight or in survival mode. All of those. Your blood sugar's high just sitting there. Because that's what happens in fight or flight to everybody. Everybody has that response. So, you have to really look at what you're not facing. What are you not facing? And that it is your fear of death.
Yeah, the fear of my health issues getting worse,
and death, and in essence, your health will.
Or living in a pain all the time and not dying. That's even worse.
Well, and to be honest with you, that's a victim position. That's I would give that one up right away, because you realize what your first experience was with this visual was immediately, oh my God, I'm over time. I gotta go. Oh my God. I got a consult right now. I totally am over.
Oh, okay. All right, that's fine.
Can I text you to follow up next week?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. I'm so sorry to be so abrupt, but I just realized I am over, and this person's a new person. They're probably like, oh my God, I sent her money and she's jipping me.
No, that's fine. Okay, bye.
Okay, bye.